My name is Jeff. Welcome to Talooli Trails. And this time I'm about 10 feet up in an old dead spruce tree because I found a bit of a mystery up here in the tree. Come on up. High up in this old dead spruce tree, there are these rather rectangular looking holes, and I've known for years that these were made by pileated woodpeckers, pecking into the dead old tree trying to get some insects out. But just today, I noticed that now inside those holes, there has been something stuffed in, and I recognize what it is. All up inside the holes created by the woodpeckers, there are black walnuts. And if I reach in, I can see, something has been working in this old dead tree. So I'm down from the tree, and to set the stage, let me tell you that it's the middle of October. And here in Camp Talooli, in the middle of October, we see a lot of these things. This is a black walnut from one of our many trees, and it grows in the tree all summer, and this time of the year it's falling off. And as it falls off, eventually the outer rind gets dark. Sometimes it'll dry out like this. But inside this black walnut hull is a really valuable nut meat. It's a black walnut. And those squirrels this time of the year are desperately trying to turn this into this. They're taking the outer hull off of it. They're letting the nut dry in some cavity or secret hiding place like we saw in the spruce tree. And then later on, throughout the winter, if you'll notice the teeth marks, they're chewing through this walnut. And it always impresses me because these walnut shells are hard as bowling balls, and yet the red squirrels and the gray squirrels can chew through there to get to the valuable nut meat inside. Imagine if your mom or dad said, "Oh, it's breakfast time. Go chew a bowling ball open to get your food." But what we find everywhere this time of the year is that the squirrels are taking the outer husks off and they're hiding these nuts in a place that's dry that they can find all winter. Because the squirrels, the red squirrels and the gray squirrels that we have around here in camp, they don't really hibernate. They're active all winter long and they need to be able to find food. They can dig for it under the snow, but the truth of the matter is they'd much rather hide it up in the tree than to bury it in the ground or to have to look for it in the ground. Like lots of animals at this time of the year, they're eagerly trying to get ready for winter. They're doing it in a couple of ways. Not only are they hiding walnuts in trees for the winter, but they're eating as much food as they possibly can because they're trying to put on a fat reserve. These are the scones from the Norway spruce trees that we have here at camp. And every one of these scales has a seed underneath it. Now, the red squirrels in particular have been harvesting these since August when they were green. And they cut a scale off, they eat the seed. They cut a scale off, they eat the seed. And eventually it looks like this. So they're eating a lot. They're also trying to find nuts from hickory trees, like this bitternut hickory. They've actually opened this one right up already and eaten the nut out of there. It's full of fats and oils and lots of good food for them. Here's even the white pine trees. Very different kind of a shaped cone. But again, every scale has a seed underneath it, and the squirrels have been chewing all the scales off to get the seeds. So this is a time of the year when the squirrels are very, very busy. By the way, speaking of squirrels, kids often think of squirrels as being gray or red, and we have both of those. They're really common here at camp. But we also have two other squirrels at camp. Remember, chipmunks are a member of the squirrel tribe. They also don't really hibernate. They will kind of sleep through part of the winter, but whenever it gets a little bit warm, they'll be out and about. And we see the chipmunks all the time. So gray squirrels, red squirrels, and chipmunks are diurnal. They're active in the daytime, kind of like people. But we have our most cool squirrel, which is only active at night, and almost nobody ever sees it, and those are the flying squirrels. Flying squirrels have got to be my favorite because it's so rare for us to see them. They sleep all day long. In fact, they sleep oftentimes with family members all in the same hole. Those same holes that were cut into the tree by the pileated woodpecker, if they go in deep to make like a nesting cavity for the bird, years later that nesting cavity could be taken over by flying squirrels. And they'll spend all day long in there. They'll come out at night, they'll look for seeds and nuts, and they can leap from one tree and glide to the other tree, and flying squirrels are really cool. Kids sometimes ask, can flying squirrels really fly? And the answer is they actually glide. Their front feet and their back feet, they stretch them out and they've evolved a piece of flap of skin between their front and their back feet. They can jump from one tree to a far off distant tree by stretching their legs out and gliding on the air. But the coolest story about flying squirrels at Camp Talooli ever, no question, is when I came into camp one day in April. Camp in Duff Lodge had been frozen all winter long. It'd be cold. And I found that there was a stack of t-shirts stacked up and folded in one of our closets. Well, we started moving the t-shirts, and inside the t-shirts, I could tell that a flying squirrel had crawled inside Duff, crawled inside the closet, crawled inside that stack of t-shirts, had curled up and taken a winter snooze. And for one reason or another, the squirrel had died. Well, the problem was the building was frozen, so the squirrel became frozen. When it was frozen, it couldn't rot. Then over the course of months, it was so dry and so frozen, all the water in the squirrel's body, frozen body, came out and it became completely dried. Well, just like Egyptian mummies are preserved because they're dry, this little squirrel was completely dry and completely preserved. So April comes along, I take the stack of t-shirts apart, and here is this squirrel all curled up just like it was. Every single part of the squirrel is there except for the water in its body. And it occurred to me, because I'm a little unusual, that if I took the squirrel and I kept it dry, it would never rot. And now I can tell you that about 20 years later, I've still got that squirrel. And this is Rocky. I like to think of him as the flying mummy. Now, to tell you the truth, I've not opened this bag in at least 10 years. But I'm gonna open it right now just to see what it looks like. It's perfectly dry inside, just like the day that I found this little freeze-dried squirrel. But what's interesting about it is you can see its fluffy tail that guides it through the sky, its leg. Here's a flap of the skin between its front and its back legs. And the entire squirrel is there, except there's no moisture. And without moisture, it can't decay. Bacteria can't grow. So I'm gonna put Rocky, the flying mummy, back into his sealed up pouch here and see if I can keep him for another 20 years. Now, obviously, as much as I like squirrels, I have to also admit they can be pretty messy. Remember the black walnuts that they want to get the nut meat out of? Well, look at the mess that the red and the gray squirrels will make on the picnic tables here in the fall. These are all of the hulls, the outside that they take off. So they're peeling the outside of this off, throwing this junk all over the place. And to be honest with you, you don't want to touch this with your hands. It'll stain your hands brown for days on end. But they'll get those hulls off and they pile them up all over the place. And so I have to go around every fall and sweep them onto the ground. They'll become soil and so forth. But boy, this time of the year, those squirrels can leave quite a mess. Now, one of the campers asked me, why do the squirrels make such a mess up on the tables? Can't they keep their mess on the ground? And the truth is, they probably could, and you do say that they do open up a lot of these walnuts on the ground, but there's a reason why they like to get up on the tables or up on top of the canoes or up on top of anything, sometimes a low-hanging branch of a tree. And that is that you have to remember that squirrels are prey animals for other things. Hawks and owls and foxes would be quite happy to make a meal out of a squirrel if they could catch it. If the squirrel's on the ground and in the open, it's much easier target for a hawk or an owl or a fox. If the squirrel is sitting up here 2 or 3 feet above the ground on the table, it can look around, it can see what's coming, it's out in the open, and boy, they like to be out in these grassy areas, up on a table a couple of feet up, and that keeps them a little safer while they're eagerly making such a mess out of all these hulls from the walnuts. So the next time that you're outside and you're looking for animals and you're kind of wondering, hey, we're at camp, can we see a squirrel? Can we see an animal? Remember that you don't always get a chance to see the critters, but sometimes you get to see evidence that they've been here. So watch for the stories that they tell, sometimes in the food that animals eat, just like the tracks that they leave and whatnot. And I hope to see you guys next time. Take care. This is Jeff from the Talooli Trails.